Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een ma ba'du. So tonight, inshallah, we move to the next section of Ad-Durus al-Muhimma li'amat al-Ummah, the explanation of the important lessons for every Muslim. And we finished the first section of the book, or the first half of the book, which was dedicated to Aqidah. The majority of it, or all of it, was surrounding Aqidah, and that's pretty much half of the explanation of the book. Now we move into the section that is dealing with fiqh, the section that is under the chapter of the science of al-fiqh. Now, before we start talking about al-fiqh, does everyone know what fiqh is? Al-fiqhu. What is al-fiqh?
Breakdown?
Again? Of what? The breakdown of the different aspects of the religion. That could be aqidah. What does fiqh specify or concentrate on? Sometimes it's translated as jurisprudence. G, the law. Which law? The law is general, but which law are we talking about? Islamic law. Tayyib. Islamic law. Tayyib. Let's be more specific or simplify it, right? If you want to simplify it, having knowledge of the halal and the haram. Tayyib. Everything we do has a ruling connected to it, right? Whether it's obligatory, haram, recommended, disliked, allowed, right? So this is in summary, al-fiqh is having knowledge of these rulings. And it's important because everything we do has some type of hukum, some type of ruling connected to it. It's not restricted to, even though we're going to start with the salat. It starts with the salat. Well, it doesn't start with the salat, actually. But in here, in this book, he starts with the conditions, shurut al-salat. The conditions of the salat. And this is something that we don't have or we shouldn't take lightly, because the salat is something we're doing every day. Day in and day out. So we don't have a time where we have some type of option of not knowing these rules for our religion. We pray every day, with no days off when it comes to the prayer. So we need to know this information every day, on an everyday basis. This is on page 197 in the translation. On page 197, the sixth lesson. So the author, rahimahullah, Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, he says, ad-dars as-sadis, shurut al-salat, wa hiya tis'ah. He says, the conditions for the prayer are 9. 9 conditions for the prayer. Tayyib. Firstly, sometimes you read a book, you find in a book, sometimes it says there are 9, and sometimes it says there are 6. Some books you read, it'll say 6 conditions for the salat, for the prayer. And another book you might see, it may say there are 9 conditions for the prayer. And he's going to get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. So he says there's 6, and then he lists what those conditions are. Now, generally, we should know, if we don't, the importance of the salat. How important is the salat? It's so important that the salat is a pillar. It's the second pillar. Most important pillar after the shahada. The Prophet ﷺ told us in another hadith that the first thing that a person will be questioned about from their actions on the day of judgment is the salat. Is the salat. This is an issue of Islam, a person's belief. Is a person a Muslim or a person is not a Muslim based on if they pray or if they don't, right? And the whole discussion surrounding that amongst the scholars of Islam. If a person doesn't pray, are they still considered a Muslim? And we don't find that discussion around other actions from the slaves, from other actions of worship. And that's a big issue. It's a big issue for the person who doesn't pray. Are they Muslim? Are they still considered to be Muslim? How many prayers do they have to miss in order for them, based on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, that between us and them, meaning those who disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the salat. So man tarakaha faqad kafar. So whoever abandoned the prayer, then they have disbelieved. Now the question is, what is abandonment of the prayer? How many prayers does a person have to miss intentionally, not intentionally, out of laziness? It's a whole discussion. But the point being is that's how important the salat is that discussion surrounds it, which shows us, it should tell us, it's not optional. And even the salat has a ruling connected to it, right? There's a hukum connected to the salat. What's the ruling on the salat? Obligatory. Are all salawat obligatory? Gee. But we know the 5 prayers, the 5 daily prayers are obligatory, not optional. So after clarifying the belief system and the aqidah and what we're supposed to believe and how we believe in Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Shaykh Abdul Razak says, he says, nextly, awwal furud al-Islam, the first obligation on the person who becomes a Muslim is that what a person takes shahada, and immediately, it's no grace period between when a person has to be and start praying. Does that mean that the new Muslim who just took shahada knows everything and what to say in a prayer? It doesn't mean that. But the fact that a person became Muslim today or yesterday, does that mean they have the option of not praying? No, they don't have the option of not praying. They still have the obligation of praying. It may be some different things or different excuses that they have on not saying certain things that they don't know, but the option of just not praying in totality, that a person just took shahada, they just became a Muslim, so they could say, well, I just became a Muslim and I don't know the prayer, so I'm not going to pray at all. That's not an option. That's not an option. And here he says, لا يستقيم الدين المسلم ولا تصلح أعماله ولا يعتدل سلوكه في شؤون الدين والدنياه حتى يقيم هذه الصلاة على وجهها المشروع عقيدة وعبادة متأسيا برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This whole statement is important. Which is at the top of page 198. The first obligation of Islam is a salat. Is the last thing abandoned from the religion towards the end of time. The religion of the Muslim will not be established because many times we wonder why we're having problems in our deen, right? The second pillar of our entire deen is the salat. He says, the religion of the Muslim will not be established, his actions will not be correct, and his methodology and the affairs of his worldly life and religion will not be balanced until he establishes the prayer upon the prescribed manner in terms of aqidah, worship, and following the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is super important. That the salat brings balance to our lives. And if we're not praying, Many of us think that we're owed something, as if Allah owes us something. طيب? So if we're not praying, how do we expect for things to go smooth in our lives in general? If we're abandoning a pillar, not something optional, a pillar. طيب. He says, in terms of aqidah, and everything that the whole first section of the book spoke about aqidah, the belief or what the shahada means, right? Being sincere, having love for Allah, being truthful, all of those things that cover the conditions of the shahada, and following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, praying as we have been taught to pray by the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam. طيب. This is not, and it doesn't happen just by accident, but it takes knowledge. We have to learn these things. We have to learn how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed in order that we can pray the way our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to pray. And just as a sidebar, sisters, I hope we understand, sisters and brothers, I hope everybody understands in a statement like this, where it says, the religion of the Muslim will not be established. And it says his actions will not be correct. I hope we understand that this means her actions will not be correct. This is not just the men have to do this. This is for the Muslims. Because a male pronoun is used doesn't negate the women. That's just a side note, that the women, the sisters, our sisters are not excluded from these things. So he mentions a very important distinction coming up, y'all. In this section here, and these issues here are very important. It's connected to the pillar. It's connected to the second pillar, right? We have to remember, it's connected to the pillar. It's connected to that thing that the Prophet ﷺ said. The first thing that a slave will be asked about their actions, Yawm al-Qiyamah, will be their prayer. طيب. He starts off, as Sheikh says, وقدم رحمه الله الكلام على الشروط لأنها تسبق الصلاة. He starts off with the conditions, because the conditions come before the prayer. طيب. Conditions come before the prayer. The conditions are not necessarily a part of the actual salah. Everybody clear? Conditions are before we even stand up to pray. There's certain things that have to be done, certain things that have to be in order before we even stand to pray. These things are not necessarily a part of the prayer. These things are not necessarily a part of the prayer. He says, وَتَكُونُ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهَا تَهَيُّئًا لَهَا وَاسْتِعْدَادًا. This is in preparation. The things, the conditions are in preparation for the salah. Before we even say Allahu Akbar, because the takbir, Allahu Akbar, starts the salah. Before we even get there, is how many things that have to be in place? I did say 6. Did I?
Some say 6, some say 9.
Some say 6, some say 9. These are the conditions, right? Before we even say Allahu Akbar, according to the author according to the author, there have to be 9 things have to be in place. Now, why is it 9 and 9? Why is it 6? We'll get to. Tayyib, he said these are in preparation for the prayer. This is in the middle of page 198, y'all, where it says the Sheikh began with the conditions of the prayer. Tayyib, he says after that, he says ثم ذكر الأركان لأنها تزامن الصلاة. After the section of the conditions, he's going to move to the pillars of the prayer. Why are the pillars important? The pillars of the prayer are actually a part of the actual prayer. They're part of the salah. The conditions are what? Not a part of the prayer. The pillars are a part of the prayer. That's one difference between the two. There's a difference between conditions and pillars. طيب. He says وقدم الأركان على الواجبات لأنها آكد وأعظم. He says, and he put the pillars, so they come in order. First we have conditions, and then he moves to the pillars of the prayer, and he moves to the wajibat, which are called obligations of the prayer, which sometimes it can be confusing. Some people get confused confused. If it's obligatory, then that means what? You have to do it. Mm. But the meaning that it carries when it comes to these issues is a little more technical than to say obligation is something we have to do. Like if we use that word like that, have to do, there's a couple ways that could be understood. Like, but anyway, he says because they are the wajibat, the obligations, they are great. They are a great part of the prayer. Obligations are serious. They're the third level, though, if you look at it. The first level is what? The conditions, and then the pillars, and then the obligations. But the obligations are serious. Obligations are a serious thing. He says, فَإِنَّ الرُّكْنَ تَبْطُلُ الصَّلَاةِ بِتَرْكِهِ أما الواجب إذا ترك فإنه يجبر بسجود السهو أما الركن فلا يجبر شيء بل لابد أن يؤتى به. طيب, this is an issue of, and it's a whole section about this. But before that section, we have to understand the difference between a pillar of the prayer. It can, I'm sorry, start from the beginning. We have to understand what a condition is, what a pillar is, and what an obligation is when it comes to the salah. And they all have a separate section. So in this section, he's summarized the difference between the two without going into much detail, but it's important to understand. So he says here, the rukn, فَإِنَّ الرُّكْنَ, the rukn is the pillar. تَبْطُلُ الصَّلَاةِ بِتَرْكِهِ, that the pillar, that the salah is invalid if a person doesn't fulfill the pillar. Clear? We're not talking about the conditions now, we're talking about the pillar. Okay? That a person, if they miss a pillar, then the salat is invalid. An example of the pillar of the salat is what? Al-Fatiha, recitation of Al-Fatiha. What does that mean? If a person stands to pray and they don't recite Al-Fatiha, that means they missed what? A pillar. And if you miss a pillar, then the salat is invalid. It doesn't count. Clear? طيب. طيب. After that he says, أما الواجب إذا ترك فإنه يجبر بسجود السهو. But the obligatory thing, the thing that we say is an obligation, if it's missed, if you miss an obligation, then you have to do what is considered to prostrate for forgetfulness at the end of the salah. طيب. Now, what's the difference between the two? He says after that, he goes back to the pillar. We have a pillar and a obligation. طيب. Let's say, for example, give two examples to make it clear, and then hopefully the text will be clear. A person stands to pray the salat, and they don't recite Al-Fatiha, which is just one of the pillars. They don't recite Al-Fatiha, which means that salat is what? Is invalid without Al-Fatiha. There's no salat without Al-Fatiha, as the Prophet said. La salata liman lam yaqra bi fatihatil kitab. So what happens in that case? Let's just say, for example, they stand to pray Salat al-Isha. They say Allahu Akbar. They say the opening dua for the Salat. And possibly something happens and they get distracted, right? And they never recite Al-Fatiha. They skip and they say Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, to the end of the surah. Then they say Allahu Akbar, and then they go into ruku'. Subhanallah. Like they come back up, say Alhamdulillah. They finish though, they go to the salat like that, right? They finish, they get to the last rak'ah, and then they end the salat, and they salam out. What's the hukum on that salat? What's the ruling on that salat? Salat is not valid. Why? They missed the pillar. They missed the pillar where? In the beginning, the first rak'ah. The first rak'ah, what was the pillar they missed? Al-Fatiha. Clear? Tayyib. Same situation, y'all. They do the same thing, and when they get to the second rak'ah or the third rak'ah, they remember that they didn't recite Al-Fatiha in the first rak'ah. Everybody with me? I'm praying Salat al-Isha. I say Allahu Akbar. I say my dua. The door slams. Throw me off. I start reciting Qul Hu Allahu Ahad, Allahu Samad. I skipped what? Skipped Al-Fatiha, which is a pillar. Tayyib. I recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. I go into the ruku. I come up, do the whole rak'ah. I stand in the second rak'ah. I start reciting Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And I remember to myself that what? I didn't recite Al-Fatiha in the first rak'ah. Clear? Tayyib, what happens in this case? Huh? The first rak'ah didn't count. Clear? First rak'ah doesn't count. There's a couple ways this can go, y'all. And why are we discussing? Because it happens a lot. Sometimes you come to the salat late, you rush and you think about something. You do something, you forget to do something. You got to know how to fix it. It's the salat. It's not something I'm going to just do it like this, man. Inshallah. Okay? We can't do this. No. We have a way. It's a way to fix it. We just got to learn the way to fix it. So that means that in that case, the second rak'ah, in that case, we'll be replacing the first one where I didn't recite Al-Fatiha. Clear? Let's say same situation. Y'all with me, sisters? Let's say same situation. I do the takbir, Allahu Akbar. Same thing. A door slams or something happens, it throws me off, and I start reciting Surah Al-Ikhlas. That I will have to go back and complete it for that rak'ah. There's a couple ways. There's a couple ways it can happen. That's why I mentioned the different scenarios. There's a couple things that can happen. I could remember that I skipped Al-Fatiha while I'm in sajda in the same rak'ah, possibly. I could remember that I skipped Al-Fatiha in the second or third rak'ah. I forgot. Once I get to the third rak'ah or the fourth, I say, the first rak'ah I never recited Al-Fatiha. That's possible. I could salam out after the salat is over and done. You understand what happened? What has to happen? In order for you to correct the prayer, when you miss a pillar, you have to come with the pillar. There's no way you can say, for example, there's no way you can skip Al-Fatiha in the first rak'ah. And then you just end the salat and you say, you know what, I'm gonna just do the 2 sujuds at the end because I forgot to pray. I forgot to recite Al-Fatiha. You understand? Not for a pillar, y'all. And that's gonna come in detail later. Clear? It's gonna come again. This is gonna come again. And that's why he says here, in that paragraph, it says, as for the rukn, فَلَا يُجْبَرُ شَيْءٌ بَلْ لَا بُدْ أَنْ يُؤْتَى بِهِ. As for the pillar, whenever you miss a pillar, you have to come with the pillar. The pillar has to be done. All right. And there's a section coming up for that. And that's why it says here in that paragraph, y'all, as for the pillars, that nothing can take their place. It is a must that each pillar is performed. You can't just say, I missed out Fatiha on the first rak'ah. I'm gonna just do the 2 sujuds at the end. And alhamdulillah. No. Not for a pillar. For a pillar, you got to go back and fix it. What about an obligation? This is the difference, y'all. In the obligation, you don't necessarily have to go back and fix it. But at the end, you have to do the 2 sujuds, the 2 prostrations for forgetfulness. Clear? And they're going to come again. He just mentioned it very briefly here. The point of mentioning it is that there's a difference between the two. Either one, if you leave them off intentionally, you're going to invalidate your prayer. You can never leave them off. I'm just not going to recite Al-Fatiha. I'm in a rush. They get ready to give me a ticket, so I'm going to just recite a short surah, and I'm going to skip this. All right? A person who intentionally leaves them, they're going to invalidate the prayer, whether it's a pillar or something that's an obligation. Clear? Don't worry about it, y'all, because it's a section coming up specifically for the pillars, and it's a section coming up specifically for the obligations. So we'll come back to it again. But just to understand, that sentence there is referring to the difference between the two. Okay? We'll do it again when we get to the pillars. Tell you, it says the sharat that we're talking about today, the condition that we're talking about today, which is the prerequisite or the thing that has to be done before we can even pray, because the conditions are not part of the prayer. Right? What's an example of the conditions of the salah? An example. Wudu, making wudu. Making wudu is not from the salah. It's not a part of the prayer. But this is before we even get to pray that a person has to be in wudu. Tayyib. The scholars define a pillar, and this is a technical definition. It says, I'm going to read this. I just want you to, it says the condition of the prayer, a condition, according to the scholars, is that which the act of worship is invalid without. But if it is present, it does not necessitate that the act of worship must be performed. Clear? It says a condition, according to the scholars, is that which the act of worship is invalid without. But if it is present, it does not necessitate that the act of worship must be performed. For example, clear? For example, wudu is a condition of the prayer. So the prayer is not correct if it is not present. And whosoever prays without wudu has no prayer. But, and he goes on, if a person is in a state of wudu, it doesn't make it necessary for that person to pray.
Oh.
Makes sense? But here, the point is, y'all, what's the point of reading it? These are technical definitions to make sure that we clear and that nothing that scholars, the goal is to make it, as they say, the definition wants to be jami'un mani'un. They want to make a clear, concise definition where nothing is left out that should be in there, and you don't put anything in there that's not supposed to be in there. So what happens? Just because a person has wudu, y'all, doesn't mean that they're making salah. Right? We can all be sitting in wudu for all night long. It doesn't mean we're necessarily praying. Right? And at the same time, a person cannot pray without wudu. Right? So what's the condition? The condition is, as they say, they define it that ما يلزم من عدمه العدم. It necessitates that if the condition is not there, then the thing that the condition is for is not there. If wudu is not there, there is no salah. Clear? If the wudu is not there, there's no salah. This is the condition. Right? ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم لذاته. And the fact that you're in wudu doesn't mean you're necessarily praying. Bas. Clear? It's possible to be in wudu for hours at a time. We all know that, right? We can be in wudu for hours and not necessarily praying. But when it's time to pray, we know that we have to be in wudu. Yes. Sahih. It's a time you make wudu, not necessarily for the salah, but for something else. Like what? For reading the mushaf. Jayyid. Reciting the mushaf, touching. Tell you for touching the mushaf, jayyid. That a person makes wudu because they want to go touch the mushaf. We stop there. Tayyib. So it's possible that a person makes wudu for something other than the salah, right? Everybody get the point of a condition? It's possible that the condition is there, but it doesn't necessitate because the thing is filled. Because you have wudu, it doesn't mean you are praying. But if you are praying, then what? You must be in wudu. You have to have wudu. Clear? طيب. And that's that. This is the details of the conditions. Now he moves on to the conditions. He says there are 9. The first 3, y'all, which is الشرط الأول, which is al-Islam. Why do some books have 9 conditions and some books only mention 6 conditions? This is because the first 3 conditions are conditions not just for the salat, but for every act of worship. In order for every act of worship to be valid, the first 3 conditions have to be met. The other 6 are specific for the salat. The first 3 that he mentions are what? For all acts of worship. Clear? Also, we have 2 sets of conditions. We have conditions that are conditions for something to be valid, meaning without this thing it's not valid. So without the salat, without the wudu, the salat is not valid. You're going to have to pray over it, right? That salat didn't count. Let me say that. No, they don't count. You got to pray again, right? So you have some conditions that are conditions for something to be valid, and then you have some conditions that are conditions for something to be obligatory on a person. Some conditions are for the validity of something, and some conditions are for an obligation on a person. For example, when is the salat obligatory on a person? Once they reach puberty and the other conditions that go along with, right? But those things are not necessarily what make the salat valid. A person could reach puberty, they've been in their sane mind, they're a Muslim. And with those 3, that means they have to pray. That means the salat is obligatory on them at that point. But it doesn't mean when they pray that their salat is valid. They could miss another condition. They might have all of these things and then they made wudu incorrectly. They did all these things and they didn't fulfill another condition. Clear? So the first 3 goes back to the point. Sometimes, because you might pick up another book and it says this conditions for salat are 6. And they won't mention the first one, which is al-Islam, that a person has to be a Muslim. They won't mention the second one, that a person has to have their aql and their sane mind. And they won't mention at-tamyiz, that a person has reached the age of at-tamyiz. I'm going to see how he translated that when we get to it. Everybody clear? So it's possible, y'all don't leave and say, well, you said 9, let's say 6. No, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Discernment. I think the explanation is probably a little more clear than the word itself once we get there. So the first condition, as he says, is al-Islam. وذلك لأن غير المسلم هو الكافر عمله باطل وحابط غير مقبول. That a person, in order for the salat to be valid, they have to be a Muslim. Or for the salat to be, is the salat obligatory on non-Muslims, y'all? Yes, no. That's an issue. That's an issue of discussion that we're not going to get into, but that's an issue. Right? Are the non-Muslims, do they have to pray salat? We're not going to go in there now, but just know that it's an issue. We'll get to that maybe another time. He says that why? Because those actions, the actions of those who disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those actions are nullified, and they will not be accepted by Allah Jalla wa Ala. As Allah said in the Quran, وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالْإِيمَانِ فَقَدْ حَبِطَ عَمَلُهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. As Allah said in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and whoever disbelieves in Allah Jalla wa Ala, then فَقَدْ حَبِطَ عَمَلُهُ, his actions have been destroyed, nullified, and in the hereafter he will be from the losers. He will be from the losers in the hereafter. And he mentions a few more ayat where Allah said, وَلَقَدْ أَوْحِيَ إِلَيْكَ وَإِلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ لَإِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ وَلَتَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. And this ayah came previously in the other section of the Aqidah section. That if you were to commit shirk, right? Who is Allah Ta'ala talking to in this case? If you were to commit shirk, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even if our Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah said, if you were to commit shirk, then all of your actions will be erased, nullified. They don't count. And you will be from the losers. And you will be from the losers. And that's the danger of a shirk, worshiping other than Allah. That's the danger of it, that it nullifies all of a person's actions. Tayyib. So with that being the case, the condition for the salat to be valid is that a person has to be what? A Muslim. Therefore, if a Muslim did pray a salat, if a Muslim prayed a salat, then the salat is what? Invalid. I'm sorry, astaghfirullah, if a non-Muslim, I'm sorry. If a non-Muslim prayed the salat, then the salat is invalid. Clear? There are other issues connected to this, y'all. It's a lot of stuff that can be connected to it, but it's not the time for that. But there are a lot of issues connected to it. We'll leave it like that to keep the point of the book. طيب, he says, الشرط الثاني العقل وضد العقل الجنون, that a person is in this sane state of mind. طيب, that a person is sane. So therefore, it says being of sound mind. And this is the opposite of sound mind is insanity. Insanity is the loss of the intellect. The pen is lifted from the insane person. The pen is lifted. Do we know what this term means? Huh? Well, yes, the pen is lifted, meaning a person is not responsible for their actions before Allah. There's some people who have mental issues, right? They have intellectual disabilities, right? In that case, you say, well, the pen is lifted from this person, right? Meaning what? The obligations are lifted off of them. So yes, they don't pray. They don't pray it 5 times a day. They don't fast on Ramadan. Yes.
I was gonna ask, what's the reason for them not having the same mind of coma? They decided to intoxicate themselves.
If a person, if a person intoxicates themselves, if a person gets high, y'all, that doesn't put them in this category. That doesn't put them in this category. When a person inflicts the loss of their intellect on themselves, it doesn't put them in this category. Clear? Especially when it's something with haram, something haram. And again, not responsible doesn't mean that a person, if they went to court, they wouldn't be held responsible or give some type of, be reprimanded, right? They still might get reprimanded. Taken to court, they still might have face some consequences. But sinning, is it a sin? Will they be punished before Allah and the person doesn't have their right state of mind? And that's the type of that's how they are. They've always been like that, and that's the type of life they live. That's a separate situation. Clear?
Just to be clear, I was gonna ask the same thing. I was gonna allude to more like this might schizophrenic if they're not taking the medication. You know, the actions that they commit while they're not in a state of mind, those specific actions, will they be held accountable or just for not, taking their pills or in this case drinking?
Say that, or not taking their pills.
Yeah, but some patients they don't want to take their pills, and then they won't be in the right state of mind. They might do something that they'll regret later or whatever. Will they be held accountable for the actions that they commit while they're under the influence or not in the right state of mind?
This is important. Everybody's not on the same level. Number one. Everybody who, let's just use the term, the pen is lifted, who's not held accountable, they're not on the same level. Number two, that's a question, or how do we qualify that they have reached that level? That's a doctor's call. It's not like a sheikh. The sheikh says, well, it's a doctor call. The sheikh is going to say, well, what did the doctor say? Did you get a medical analysis? You understand what I'm saying? I don't know. I can't give a medical analysis if a person is like that. We have general ideas that when we see certain characteristics, to us, we assume that a person, right, is not in their right state of mind, that they have an issue somewhere, right? That's our assumption. It all depends on the situation. It all depends on the situation. It's possible that Allahu Alam, Allahu Alam, but it depends on the situation. That they leave a person who's not stable, that they leave a person who's not stable to be responsible for taking the medicine that makes them stable. You know what I'm saying? So it varies from person. It's not like a one paintbrush you can pay. It's going to vary because the levels are going to vary. طيب. طيب. So this person also, that the salat from this person is not valid. It's not obligatory on him, and it's not valid. It's not valid. Why wouldn't the salat from a person who's not in their right state of mind be valid? Anything else?
They won't be. They won't be able to evaluate if they met all the conditions.
Jayid.
Pillars, etc.
One thing specifically. More important than that. Intention. How does the person in the right state, how do they la yaqal an-niyya, as they say? They're not even able to formulate and make the niyya for the ibadah. You with me? And that fits the case for number 2, and it fits the case for number 3. Number 3, which is الشرط الثالث التمييز. التمييز. Does anybody know what this word means? No. Yeah. Discernment. That's what it says in the book. No, what does the word discernment mean? That's the meaning of the whole thing. But it's important to, when we come across some words that we don't know like that, we should look them up in English just to make sure. What is that? Judgment. Tell you, judgment. The age of judgment. When you put it together, it makes sense with the explanation that comes with it. It says, and yakunu mayizan, that a person, the child, is able to judge generally between what's right and what's wrong. Well, they 100%? Maybe not. They kids, all right? So he says, وَإِنَّمَا يَبْلُغْ حَدَّ التَّمْيِيزِ فِي السَّابِعَةِ, that a child reaches that age when they hit the age of 7. By the age of 7, that they have reached a level mentally, to be able to, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. I know I'm gonna get in trouble if I do. They have some type of, right, understanding of that. Tell you, before the age of 7, because they say a condition for the salat is that they had to reach the age of tamyiz, the age of 7. So if they reach the age of 7, they have their sanity and they're Muslim, then they can what? They can pray, right? Sahih? Y'all with me? Let's start from the beginning. The child is Muslim. He or she is in their right state of mind. He or she is 8 years old. Tayyib? Can they pray? If they prayed, would their prayer be valid if they met the rest of the conditions? Clear? They met the rest, assumption, they met all the conditions. And they prayed the salat. Would they get rewarded for it? Alhamdulillah. Tayyib. Let's say the same child, Muslim, they have their sanity, and he or she is 5 years old. He or she is 5 years old. Tayyib. If they prayed, right, would the salat be valid from them?
Yes. They
met all other conditions.
Yeah.
Tayyib. So if they're 5, then what's the difference between the 5-year-old and the 8-year-old?
He prayed good in it, but you can't really know.
What's the difference in the child who is 5 years old, and what's the difference in the child that is 8? How are they different? Gee, now we get them. So the 8-year-old, the assumption is the 8-year-old has what? better judgment, which means they're able to form an intention for the salah. Whereas the 5-year-old has not reached that age of judgment. Therefore, they're not able to form the intention for the salah. Clear? Therefore, the one that's under the age of 7, if they did pray, it wouldn't count. It's cute and all, y'all. It's nice to see them praying. We should do that. We're talking about leading grown-ups, because sometimes people want to lead. They want to put the child 4, 5, and they want them to lead grown adults, men and women, who the salat is obligatory on, and they want the child who the salat is not obligatory on. And some of the children, if they pray, right, they pray without an intention. They want that person who prayed without an intention to lead people behind them. You see the problem? Yes.
I was thinking it's not case-to-case basis because you can't think one brother and say all 5-year-olds, all 5-year-olds on all one level, and every 8-year-old is above every 5-year-old.
Sahih. But in this case, how do we get to say 7 is the age anyway? What? What's the hadith? Huh? And this is what the scholars use. The fact that he said 7, he specified the age of 7. Teach him at 7, which means this is what they use as a dalil to say, okay, by 7 they should be able to form the intention. He didn't say teach him at 5. He specified, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, teach him at 7, and by 10, if they're not praying, as they say, all right, tighten them up, as we say. Tighten them up is not abuse, y'all, because sometimes we go left crazy. We mad because a 2-year-old won't stand in the line and pray. A 2-year-old. We mad because a 5-year-old lines up. We line him up to pray with us. Soon as we say Allahu Akbar, he run off, and we upset, screaming, yanking him up, embarrassing me at the masjid. They number one, it's not obligatory on them to pray. Number one, they're not obliged to pray until when? Until puberty. They got, right? Number 2, that 5-year-old, even if they pray according to what you understand? So not that we shouldn't be teaching them, but we shouldn't be going overboard and disciplining them, right? We can't go overboard in the discipline of a person who the deed itself is not even, it's not obligatory on, number 1. It's not like they're leaving off an obligation. And number 2, they're at a level at that point where it's just a teaching stage. It's more or less teaching stage. And if we got kids, you got to tell them the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. So they leave your house. You tell them the same thing. So you see the difference? And that's how we get to say 7. All 7-year-olds, have they reached it? Like you said, they vary. But what do we have to say? No, you're 7 or you're 8, and you haven't reached. We don't have anything to say that. Unless we have something from a doctor where we can use the other excuse that the pen is lifted from him. Right? So the age of tamyiz, and they use that exact hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, muru abna'akum. And as he mentions here, I hope he mentioned it here, because this is important too. That hadith in the middle of page 201, y'all, where it says, command your children to pray at the age of 7, and beat them if they do not do it at the age of 10. So it's important to mention, but it's not mentioned here. It says here an explanation, وَيَشْمَلْ الْبَنِينَ وَالْبَنَاتِ. This includes our daughters and our sons, not just the sons. It's not just you tell a boy to pray and she can lay there and she doesn't have to pray. No, we should be teaching our children to pray. Whatever we're doing is Islam is for, we have Muslim men and Muslim women. When we start specifying that this is only for the man, then we need some dalil to show that that's only for the man, right? We know that certain things are restricted, that it's for the men, right? Like what? What is something specific for the men, Islamically? Huh? Calling the adhan. Or more than that, leading a jama'ah in prayer. right? We don't have, a woman doesn't come here, our sister doesn't come here and lead us in the prayer, right? That's possible. If it's all sisters, a sister leads them, and if that's possible, it's a different situation. Talking about a situation like this, we come to the masjid for Salatul Jummah. Who gives the khutbah, men or women? Men. I saw a cartoon one time, and it had a picture. It was a cartoon showing why. Maybe I shouldn't. Never mind. Never mind. I think we all know the wisdom behind. Never mind. Tayyib. Tayyib. Point being, here he mentions that the command to tell the children to pray includes the girls and the boys. Right? It includes the girls and the boys. Tayyib. I hope that's clear so far. So those first three, y'all, those first three are connected to all worship. That means it's connected. Those first three are connected to fasting, right? And any other worship, and they specify in a specific situation that is really no haja right now to mention it, but those three are connected to all worship. Now the fourth one in our book, this starts now the actual condition for the salah. Specifically, these are now conditions specifically for the salah. So when you look in the book and it says 6, it might not mention those first three. Because what's the assumption? We already know those three count for everything. So they might, the scholar, whoever wrote the book, might not mention it. They might start with just the 6. طيب, he says الشرط الرابع رفع الحدث. رفع الحدث. والحدث يتناول الحدث الأكبر والأصغر. طيب, being free of ritual impurity. What is ritual impurity? Huh? What is, it says, that's what it says right here. It says being free, the fourth condition is that we have to be free of ritual impurity. And then it goes into the details. But what is ritual impurity? Those are the categories of ritual impurity. But what is ritual impurity? Al-hadith.
You're not in a condition to make salah.
Jay, you're not in a, let's say, you're not in a state to be able to pray. So you're hadith. What does hadith mean? Hadith is a wasf, qa'im ala badan. It's a description that we give to a person, la yura bil ayn, that you can't see it on them now. You with me? If a brother or sister comes in here right now, how do you know by looking at them if they have wudu or not? Right? I mean, that wouldn't what little what? Right? How do you know if they have wudu or not? Just by looking at them. You can't tell by looking at a person if they have wudu or not, if they're in the state of ritual impurity or not. So ritual impurity means they're not, as we say, I'm not in wudu. So if I'm not in wudu, I have to make wudu. So when I say I'm not in wudu, that means I'm ritually impure. I'm hadith. Everybody with me? Sisters, you clear? Tayyib. In order to pray, I have to remove that state of being ritually impure. I have to remove that. How do I remove that? How do I get rid of being not able to pray? If you can say that. At the least, I got to do what? At the least one way, or let's just say one way, not at the least. One way I can remove it is by making wudu. Even though, y'all, it's important, even though you can't see it. Nobody would never know. If a person came in here right now and lined up to pray, we would never know if they were in wudu or not. But Allah knows, and that will be on them. And that's why sometimes we line up to pray, and while we praying, a brother or a sister in the middle of the salat, they do what? Hey, walk off. I forgot I wasn't in wudu. I got to go make wudu, right? Which is fine. It's no problem with that. Point being is that the people on the outside, there's not something that's written on them that you can see if they're in wudu or not.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the same apply if like you're leading like sisters? You're not able to do, you can walk off and let them figure it out.
If you're leading sisters in the salat and the imam is not in wudu, that's an issue, y'all. Istikhlaf. There's a way to fix that. It is a way to fix that. Whether it was sisters or brothers, there's a way to fix that. Well, the imam, it depends. He started the salat and he wasn't in wudu? Or in the salat, he has to break wudu?
No, he started without.
Or if he started the salah without wudu, then y'all not praying. He don't have wudu, right? You praying with the imam is praying without wudu, you don't have wudu. How you praying without wudu? Hold on. You with me? It's a different situation if you're in the prayer. For example, I'm in the prayer and I have to use the bathroom. Like I can't wait. You with me? The imam is in the prayer. He has to use the bathroom. He can't wait, for example. There's a way to fix that. It's possible. All right, I'll say it. It's a lot of possibilities that could work. There's a lot of ways it could go. Maybe the imam didn't start the salat with wudu. Maybe he started the salat with wudu, and while he was in the salat, he broke wudu while he was praying. Maybe he broke one while he was praying, so he broke his wudu, right? Or he's praying, he didn't break his wudu yet, but he feels like he's going to, and he wants to protect the people behind him. But we got to do that somewhere else. That's going to be his whole point. Being, it's a way to do it. Yes.
I won't get into the details, but the first part when he said the imam starts the salat without wudu. So is that salat not started for everyone?
Yeah, they following the imam.
So no one has salat.
Nobody has salat. That's why the imam has a heavy burden on him. You're responsible for everybody praying behind you. That means your wudu needs to be perfect. That means your qira'ah of what? Al-Fatiha needs to be as perfect as possible. Because everybody's salat is on your shoulders. You're responsible for everybody behind you. And that's the benefit of knowing who's behind you in the salat, right? How long to recite, how short to recite. Because everybody's behind you. Their khushu' is, you know what I'm saying? Everything is connected to the imam. That's why the imam is, you can't pray in front of him, all of the rules that go for the imam. Yes.
Like you said, for another topic, but like you said, if you're the imam, you started the salat without the wudu, and you remember,
Yeah.
you salam out with you. What you doing? I'm confused.
I saw, it was one of the imams at the Haram did that in Medina. It's on YouTube if you want to look at it. It takes wallahi, man. The Jonas, can you imagine leading the salat at the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's masjid, and whatever happened, you have to stop and go make wudu and come back with all of those people behind you?
You go make wudu and come back and finish, or
I would tell you what he did. Look it up. I'm gonna tell you what he did. He said, "Antadru daqiqa," and he walked off. He said, "Wait 1 minute." He walked off because they got a camera on the imam. He walked off, and the people were still behind him like this. And everybody started looking up like, "What's going on?" He walked off. He went, made wudu, came back, and said, "So, there is no salat if I don't have wudu and I'm the imam." He said, "Wait 1 minute." You could turn if you don't have this, you could turn around and tell everybody, "Listen, I'm not a wudu. I don't make wudu. I'll be right back."
So there's no salam or nothing. Just stop.
You're not salamming out enough. You never started. That's just it's humbling, because in reality it's a mistake from the imam, right? And you got all of the people behind you depending on you, and in reality you miss something that everybody know you can't. So you have to go. It ain't like you could I'm gonna just act like I got it. No. Everybody's salat is on your back. You got to stop, and this is what happened. Which shows we human. We human. That's the imam of the Haram in Medina. It's not like you know what I'm saying, leading the Haram in the Prophet message. We human, we make mistakes, we forget, we fall short, but things are fixable, alhamdulillah.
He was just like, you know, sit off. Okay.
No, he said he started Allahu Akbar. And he never started to recite. And before he started to recite, he leaned into the mic and said, "Wait 1 minute," and then he went and made wudu and came back and they started over.
You're already in the salat.
It would be the same thing. You ain't in the salat, bro. Reality. You're not in the salat. You don't have wudu. There is no salat without the wudu. So in reality,
how do you go about
it would be the same way as if you're praying behind the imam, right? And the imam is reciting, and you remember while you're praying that you don't have wudu. What do? You just go. Now the imam, of course, he can turn around, because in reality, he can turn around and say and talk to the people. He's not in the salat. He's going to break the salat anyway, right? Just to give the people some clarity of what's going on. Right? He can do that. There wouldn't be no harm in that. طيب. So, رفع الحدث. So, in order to remove that description, as we say, I'm not in wudu, I either have to make wudu or I might have to make a ghusl, depending. And that's why he says, al-hadath yatanawalu hadath al-akbar. There's a major type of impurity ritual impurity, and then there's a minor type of ritual impurity. Okay, there's a major type and a minor type. The major type needs a ghusl. So after intercourse, that a person has to make a ghusl in order to pray. A person can't have intercourse with their spouse and then just get up, make wudu and pray. No, obligatory to make a ghusl, the bath, the whole bath. You can't just make wudu after that. But if a person uses the bathroom right throughout the day, they prayed Fajr, they went to work, while they were working, they had to stop. They used the bathroom, right? They break wind, right? Then they broke wudu. At that case, you're at work, you go in the bathroom, you make wudu, and then you can pray the next salat. So how do you remove that ritual impurity? If it's a small ritual impurity from using the bathroom, going to sleep, sleep breaks your wudu, y'all. Right? You go to sleep, you wake up, it breaks your wudu. Sleep breaks your wudu. If you fall asleep, you wake up, hey, y'all crazy. You got to make wudu. Now, if you had intercourse with your spouse, then you need more than a wudu. You need a ghusl. Yes. Even if, y'all, even if for the ghusl, even if the two private areas touch, once they touch, the wudu is obligatory. Yeah.
Somebody informed me of a narration where companions were waiting for Fajr to come in. They were laying down. One of the person was snoring.
He was snoring?
Yeah, I'm not sure the word. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
Have you heard of this?
I heard of the narration. I never heard him snoring.
Okay.
I'm not saying I've never heard him snoring. The narration, what did I say? If you sleep. Yeah. There's a difference. We know they were leaning like that. Some of them were leaning like that. Right? Sleep breaks your wudu. There's a type of what we say is if I was nodded, right? I'm nodding. What's the difference? I'm nodding. You know how was you asleep? No, I wasn't asleep. I heard everything you said. Right? You're nodding, but you're aware of what's going on. You can hear people talking and that kind of thing. It's not the same. The person that goes to sleep and they wake up, right? You know if you were asleep or not. You know if you were asleep or not, right? Sometimes I'm looking at a person and I think they sleep. And then they start talking to you, right? You're like, I thought you were asleep, right? And sometimes a person they could be sitting up like that, they knocked out, right? It's a difference between being asleep and being, as we say, I don't really know the other word for it, but we say nodding. I was just nodding. Dozing off might be better. That sounds like you're at work. They caught you sleeping. Yeah.
Concept of like dozing off, it's like you're phasing into sleep and you coming back out and you're phasing. It's like it's like dipping and
Jade.
coming back out.
Okay.
Isn't it like once you enter that realm of actual sleep?
Well, the difference.
No.
Because the difference is we got the hadith that allows us to use that window. The hadith of the Sahaba, nodding and not being taught, that allows us to use that space.
What is that?
Well, the Sahaba, they were waiting for Isha, and they were like, as we say, dozing or nodding. They weren't asleep, laying down, knocked out, but they were nodding. And then they stood up to pray Isha, and they didn't go make wudu. And they weren't commanded to go make wudu, which means what? You think the Prophet will let them pray and without wudu?
So what's the window is dozing off, or you?
It's a doze where you're still conscious of what's going on around you, but it's not like a sleep when you lay down flat, you knocked out, and you only know where you're at. You wake up, you don't know where you're at. You wake up. Yeah, it's not that. You wake up and they say clock out. It's not one of them.
If you still aware, like you said, like you're still aware of
Yeah.
you still. I read something like you still know where you at.
Right.
Because when you go into a deep sleep, you kind of like you know where you're at, but you wake up like
You know when you sleep or not, and that's on everybody because it's possible a person thinks you sleep and you're not. That's on you to be honest with yourself before Allah. It's the salat. It's not like it's a game. You're gonna wake up and you're gonna pray like that. So a person might say, they come like sometimes you come in the masjid, a brother laying down or he leaning on the wall. It's time to pray. They call it then, and you say to the brother, "Yo, you gotta make wudu." And he says, "What? I wasn't asleep." All right, that's on him. In reality, that's on him. Was he asleep or not? It looked like he was asleep, but is everybody who sits, y'all, against the wall with their eyes closed, are they asleep to the point they broke their wudu? Islamically? No. Whose call is that? It's their call. Now, sometimes, we're not talking about extreme cases where,
But what if it's most extreme? You say,
if that's on him, at the end of the day, if you tell a person make wudu, you almost look at, he was knocked out, man. And they say, no, you gonna make them make wudu? That's on them. That's on them. It's a salat. You can't pray without wudu. So ultimately, it's gonna be on them. So the removal of the hadith, that ritual impurity, is either by wudu or ghusl. Majority of the time, like throughout the day, majority of the time is with wudu. Because as we're going to get to later, we're going to get to what breaks the wudu. What makes us, no, you broke your wudu, you have to make wudu again. He said, no, I made wudu for Fajr. Yeah, but you went home, laid down with the sleep, woke up, went to the bathroom, like you did multiple things that you have to make a new wudu in order to pray. You can't pray like that. All right, so we're going to get to the things that actually, as we say, break the wudu, right? So if I want to pray, I have to get in wudu. I have to go make a wudu, or possibly a ghusl if it was intercourse. Tayyib. And of course, y'all, all of this is summarized. This is, it's summarized. Tayyib. And he brings a hadith at the end of the chapter, or at the end of that condition. I think we'll stop on this one for the day. Where the Prophet ﷺ said, "La tuqbalu salatun bighayri tuhur," that the prayer is not accepted if a person is not in a state of ritual purification. That the salat is not valid if the person is not in a state of ritual purification. So if a person has to make wudu and they pray, the salat is what? Invalid. But even though they're Muslim, they have their same state of mind, they're of age, they're adults, they're above their age, and they're doing everything, but they don't have wudu. Then that means what? The salat is invalid. So all of these things have to be kept. That is not like you can just do out of 9 of them. You say, well, I covered 4 of them, so I should be good. No. They have to all be filled or completed. Tayyib? Yes. We'll stop there unless there's any questions.
so if a person, like you were saying, started the salat, left the salat. Remember, he didn't have wudu. But at that time, he didn't know that he was supposed to slam out. His judgment, he didn't know how to handle the situation. He figured, if this is salat, his assumption, he thought the salat counts for them, but I'll just go with my I'll slam out on the other stuff. Because he didn't know, he didn't know. Nobody take over. He didn't know what the rules was. Everybody else. Right? Does he have to go back and tell them, like, remember 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe that's a lot.
That's the problem on that, brothers. That's our problem. That's all of us should see the importance of knowing the ahkam of the salat and the ahkam of being the imam. Not just knowing the rules of the salat, the rules of being the imam. Everybody, all the brothers here, everybody here is an imam at some point. You're going to be the imam somewhere. You don't have to be imam here. When you leave out of here, you're going to be somewhere and you're going to be the imam of somebody else. You're going to be leading the prayer. We human. We forget stuff. We make mistakes. It has to be important to us to fix it. Knowing how to fix it. You dig what I'm saying? That's the imam's problem. There's a whole chapter about how to be the imam, what to do and what not to do. So now back to the question, that a brother, without knowing those rules about being the imam, right? He never learned them. And now he's the imam. So he messed up. He did something and now he's worried about the people salat behind him. So mushkila. That's a mess. It depends. You trying to say, is their salat valid?
No, well, now you're saying it wasn't valid. So
No, I'm making sure I'm understanding the question. Are you saying, is the question, even though he knows his wudu, he's not in wudu? Is the question, what about the people behind me? So he thinks they should be cool. I'm just messed up. Is that what he thinks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that.
They can't be held accountable for. They can't be held accountable.
Like you said, one of you can't look at the
Followers.
The followers can't be held accountable if the imam is not on wudu.
They don't know. The imam that tells them they're not.
No, but what does the imam do now?
Well, the other matter
You learned that this is the case.
it's a difference when it after the salat. That's an issue where the people behind them are not. The salat is over. Once they leave and they disperse, it's not really on them at that point. He still has to pray over. He might never see them people again.
Or he does see the people.
Well, if he does see him again, from what I know, their salat is fine. But this is when the salat is over. There's a difference if you know in the salat, and there's a difference if like time wise. If you know in the salat, he knows he's not in wudu, right? And they know he's not in wudu. You with me? They prayed the whole prayer like that, and they left. Is it still on the people to pray over? I don't think so. Wallahu a'lam.
You said they know that he's not good. Everybody has to
Yeah, if they know, but if they don't know and they left. But he knew, but the people left. I don't think so, but Wallahu a'lam.
They have that right. Well, they have that pass only until they leave that salat, right?
As long as they don't know he wasn't in wudu.
Something like they're unknowing until
Right.
they leave.
If they find out, if everybody sitting there finds out the imam wasn't in wudu, they got to pray over. But if it never comes up, I ain't know he was in wudu. How many people matches we go into, we pray behind people? We don't know anything about that. We don't know anything. I don't know. With the assumption is the imam has wudu. That's the assumption. He's the imam. He's supposed to know better.
Should he bring it up?
If he's not in wudu,
No, after Islam.
and he's not in wudu,
It depends. That's what-
hold. Should he bring it up? He prayed a whole salat, not in wudu. All the people behind him don't know he doesn't have wudu. He turns around and lets them leave. He definitely should bring it up. If he's gonna do that, he should have stopped in the middle of the salat. You with me? If he's gonna turn around and say something after you prayed 4 rak'ah, he should have stopped when he realized he wasn't in wudu, stopped right there, and when he made wudu and came back. You dig what I'm saying? What would be the benefit of praying like that with no wudu? And that it's so deep, y'all, that some, if I'm not mistaken, it's Imam Shafi or some of the scholars have even mentioned that to intentionally pray without a condition fulfilled, some of them have took it to the level of being disbelief. Serious. That you pray intentionally. You're gonna pray intentionally without wudu? Some have went to that case, and it's a discussion.
When you say bring it up, you mean like you were saying 4 or 5 weeks in the line, bring it up, or immediately after the salat? Because those are 2 different things.
Oh, with his question?
Yeah.
I'm gonna really just nitty you up. It was me.
Okay.
I love this.
But
I didn't know
And
that.
you just, that's what I'm saying. You just
People
found,
behind.
you said you just found this out right now?
Yeah.
Then don't say there's no point.
oh, if you just found out now, then you ain't nothing you can do. You already left. But the proper thing to do would be to stop, make wudu. That's the proper thing to do.
Thinking that.
Mhm.
The only thing is I didn't know because I was reading things. I wasn't sure. I didn't know the rules.
Mm.
Stop or.
Even if you went all the way through and you felt like if a person were to tell them, that would be an issue. We got to pray over it. But I'm not saying it like there's no harm, y'all. I'm saying we human. There's no harm in being a human. There's no harm in being a human, meaning there's no harm. We forget. Like they're gonna refute. Like, what are we gonna do? I forgot. I made a mistake. I'm human. You know what I'm saying? It's no harm in being human, but the fact that we're human don't mean we don't fix it and do it right. You know what I'm saying? It was the Prophet ﷺ taught us how to fix things. So when we fall short and make the mistake and don't do things right, we just gotta know how to fix them. Inshallah.
I got a question. So, there be times where, like, before the slide, I'll do I have to do? I'm cool. And then in the middle of the slide, I'll start thinking again, do I have to do it? And then I'm like, that in itself, thinking about what you have to do in the salat. Are you supposed to like think any of that type of shit?
In the salat?
In the salat.
The whisper of the shaitan.
Are you supposed to be thinking about what you have to do in the salat?
The usl is that you go with what you're sure about.
Right.
It's not something that we got to go back and forth the whole salat if I got wudu or not. Do you have wudu or not? Yes, I have wudu. Now, if it comes to you while you're praying, because sometimes it happens, it comes to you while you're saying, you know what? That's just life. We human. While you praying, you remember, you know what? I did go to the bathroom before I left the house. And I was talking to such and such. And everything might run in your mind. Now the reality comes, you know what? I did break wudu. While you praying, you stop. As far as going back and forth in the salat, when you started the prayer, you started on certain I'm in wudu. And that's what you go with. I made wudu at such and such time. While you praying, the reality overtakes you. Say, yo, you know what? No, I did break. And you sure, not you think. Because certainty is not removed with doubt. That's a principle. What you're certain about, doubt can't erase that. So once you're certain that you made wudu, only thing that can remove that fact that you made wudu is that more certainty comes that you broke wudu. So you don't have to go back and forth with it. That's nothing. You with me?
The problem will be where that uncertainty comes, so now you're like, now you're about to retrace your whole life.
No. It's not. We don't have to do that. We're not obliged to do that. That's the point. And that's the point of the principle. The qaida is you go with what you're certain about. When I stand up to pray, I'm certain I'm in wudu. Cool, I pray. If it comes to me while I'm praying, no, you know for sure, it's sure, not doubt, not I think. Wait a minute, did I really when I did that? No. We don't have to pay attention to that.
Also with that, isn't it only considered like it could come to you in the salah like if you think you might have thought you had dead or something. And it's like in that sense, isn't it if you only hear it or smell it? Like anything else you kind of just gotta
right. The hearing, the smelling is, but see, the hearing, the smelling would be certain. That's the certainty that comes to let you know that you. Right. No, they're not the only two ways, because it's possible. That's why you're praying. It's possible, right? That's if you're breaking it while you're praying. You heard something. Yeah, but it's possible while you're praying, you remember that you broke it before. You with me? Whenever the certainty comes that overrides what you thought you was on, that's what takes over. So I started off, I was praying, I knew I was in wudu. While I was praying, it came up, that's right. Never mind. Once that certainty comes, it removes that one, so you go with what you're sure about. As far as going back and forth and having to debate yourself in the salat, that's from the shaitan. That's from the whisper of the shaitan to throw your khushu off.
I'm not sure this is appropriate right now, but we mentioned about the also. It's when the private part is touched.
Yes.
What can you give a little more clarity on this? You know, what other scenarios? How? You know, like
other scenarios for ghusl?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say if your hands touch the private part.
That's wudu. That breaks that wudu. Yes. For the ghusl, other scenarios that make it obligatory would make a ghusl, intercourse, even if the private parts touch with no ejaculation. With ejaculation requires a ghusl. Wet dream, intercourse with ejaculation, wet dream, nocturnal emission with ejaculation. When the private parts touch with or without ejaculation. The fact that they touch necessitates ghusl. And it's gonna come up. That's another section. What breaks the wudu? That's gonna come up again.
I really wondered something about sexual touch with intention, as in like foreplay. So does foreplay require a whistle? Like say y'all was in Mockley, you commit foreplay, but you didn't actually get to, you feel me? So but you were the kids came, something happened.
Long as the private parts touch, the ghusl.
That's what I'm saying, but the private part, your hand mentioned about your hand the foreplay going, and the private part is gonna get there yet. So would that require a wudu?
You tell me. You tell me, y'all. This is what they do. The ulama, they give you qawaid and they give you the rule. This is the rule. You apply the rule. Okay. The man, there's foreplay. The private parts didn't touch. Are they touching each other? Possibly. Possibly. Now the question is, does a man touching his wife or does a woman touching her husband in a foreplay manner, does that break the wudu? Yes. Do they have to make ghusl for that? No. Why don't they have to make ghusl? When do we have to make ghusl? When the private parts touch. Or ejaculation from foreplay. You with me? We get to that. We gonna get there. No, it's gonna come back up. It's gonna come back up. It's a whole section of what breaks the wudu. And generally, that comes, Allah Alam, I don't know why, but that section generally comes before the salat. like in the books of fiqh, they go through water, and then they go through wudu. Oh, they go through water, istinja, the cups you can use, and wudu, and then they come with the salat, because in reality, we make wudu and stuff first, and then we go pray. So wudu and stuff usually comes before the salat, but Allah Alam, the Shaykh put the salat, the condition of salat first, and then the things wudu and what breaks the wudu is going to come. So it's going to be a whole section on that. We'll stop there, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.